Picture a Saturday morning in early June. Your neighbor walks out with a watering can, stirs in a scoop of rust-colored powder, and sprays his whole front lawn in about the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee. Sunday morning, you look over the fence, and every clover leaf in his yard has gone black around the edges. The dandelions are curling up like burnt paper, and his grass. I want you to hear this part. His grass looks greener than it did the day before. Not damaged, not scorched. Greener. And you stand there in your slippers thinking, well, how on earth? One cheap bag, one morning, and the weeds are dying while the grass is thriving. It sounds like a magic trick. It isn't. It's real chemistry, and it has been sitting in plain sight for almost 100 years. But there is a piece of that story, the most important piece, that the fellow who taught you this little trick very likely left out. And that missing piece is the whole difference between weeds that stay gone and weeds that come marching right back before your first tomato is ripe. So pour yourself something warm, pull up a chair, and let's talk about it the way two old gardeners would talk about it over the fence. Because here at Evergreen, we have never been much interested in the flashy half of a story. We want the whole thing, the part that helps you and the part that keeps you safe. Let's start with the good news, because there is real good news here. That rust-colored powder is a mineral called iron sulfate. You'll also see it written as ferrous sulfate, or sometimes just labeled lawn iron, or moss killer, down at the garden center. Same mineral, different bag. And the trick your neighbor pulled off is genuine. Iron really can knock down a whole crop of broadleaf weeds while leaving your grass standing tall. Now here is the part that always tickles me. Folks share this online like they just cracked open some brand new secret. My friend, this is not new. I went looking through the old records, and I found a bulletin from 1929. That is right, before most of our parents were even born. That lays it out plain as day. Iron sulfate, used as a selective spray for dandelion and plantain in the lawn, for when those weeds get to be more than you can dig out one at a time. 1929. The groundskeepers on the golf courses have been using iron for generations to keep the moss off their putting greens and the color deep and dark. Over in England, they mixed it into sand and called it lawn sand, and your great-grandmother might have spread it by hand. So this is not a hack somebody dreamed up for the internet last spring. This is old knowledge. The kind of plain, useful wisdom the county extension agent might have shared with your father, back when every county had an office you could walk right into and ask a real person a real question. If you are old enough to remember those offices, or the dog-eared old farmer's almanac on the kitchen shelf, then you already know the flavor of what I mean. The folks who kept a victory garden going through the war years knew their soil and their weeds the way we know our own kitchens. They did not have a shelf of bright bottles to lean on. They had knowledge, handed down person to person, and a good deal of it still holds up better than what they will sell you today. All right, so why does it work? Why does the very same spray burn the weeds but feed the grass? And this is where it turns beautiful, because the answer is written right into the shape of the plants themselves. Look at a dandelion. Look at clover, at plantain, at that creeping Charlie. What do they all have in common? Wide, flat, open leaves. A big broad surface, soaking up whatever lands on it like a sponge. The botanists call these broadleaf plants, dicots. Now look at your grass. Narrow little upright blades, waxy, standing straight up, shedding water like a good raincoat. Grass is a monocot. And here is the trick nature plays for us. When you mist iron across the lawn, those wide weed leaves drink in a big heavy dose, far more than they can handle. The iron overwhelms the tissue. It oxidizes inside the leaf. Think of it as rust forming where rust has no business being. And within a day or two, the top of that weed turns black and dies. Your grass, meanwhile, with its skinny blades, catches only a little. And that little bit does not hurt the grass. It helps it. Because iron is one of the ingredients a plant needs to build chlorophyll, the green pigment that runs the whole show. Now I will be straight with you, the way an evergreen video always is. Iron is not the heart of the chlorophyll molecule. That seat belongs to magnesium. But iron is the spark the plant needs to manufacture it. Give the grass a light dusting of iron, and it greens up like it just sat down to a good supper. So the very same spray, in the very same minute, is burning the weed and feeding the grass. That is not a gimmick. That is just biology, doing what biology has always done. Okay, so if it is real, and it is cheap, and it is 100 years old, why isn't your lawn already perfect? Why am I not just telling you to run to the store this minute? Because of one single word. And it is a word that fellow in the other video never once said out loud. The word is contact. Iron sulfate is a contact killer. It burns what it touches. It touches the leaf, so it kills the leaf. What it does not do is travel down inside the plant and kill the root. It is not what the scientists call systemic. And that difference, contact versus systemic, well, that is the whole ballgame. Picture that dandelion one more time. You see the little rosette of leaves sitting on top. But underneath, that dandelion has a taproot. A thick, pale root that can drive down 8, 10, even 12 inches into the soil, like a carrot with ambition. When you spray the iron, you burn off the green top. It turns black, it looks stone dead, and you feel like a champion standing there with your sprayer. But that big taproot, down in the dark? It never got the message. It is still full to the brim with stored energy. And in 2 or 3 weeks, quiet as you please, it sends up a fresh rosette of brand new leaves, right in the very same spot. And I am not guessing at this. The university extension folks have run these trials for years. What they find, over and over, is that iron gives you maybe 2 to 10 weeks of control on the tough perennial weeds. And the labels on the real, tested products tell you to spray again every 3 to 4 weeks, up to about 4 times across a season. Read that back to yourself slowly. The honest instruction, printed right on the bag, is, expect to do this several times. So when you watch a video where a man sprays once on Saturday and declares the whole war won by Monday, that is not exactly a lie. It is just the first chapter of the story, told to you as if it were the last one. The weeds he burned will be back. He simply stopped filming before they showed up again. And this, right here, is the whole reason a channel like EverGreen exists. Anybody can sell you the exciting 48 hours. We would rather sit with you through the 2 or 3 weeks that come after, because that is the part that actually decides whether you are pleased with your yard or standing out there frustrated. Come August, I will wager you already know exactly how this goes, because it happens to good, careful gardeners every single year. Somebody finally beats the clover in the front yard with one Saturday of iron. Black by Sunday, greener than ever. The wife thinks he snuck out at dawn and fertilized, and then July rolls around. The clover is back, thicker than it was before, and he cannot, for the life of him, understand why. Well, now you understand it. The leaves died. The roots did not. He treated the top and left the engine running underneath. And that is not his fault, not one bit. Nobody ever told him about that one small word. Now, before you go anywhere near this stuff, 2 warnings. The first one, the other fellow got right, so I will say it fast. Iron stains. It stains concrete. It stains your pavers, your patio, the siding on the house, your gloves, your knees, and your bare hands. A rusty orange that does not want to leave. The iron oxidizes the second it touches a hard surface. So if a drop lands on the driveway, you rinse it that instant. Seconds, not minutes. Wear old clothes. Wear gloves. And keep the spray off of anything you are not aiming at. But here is the second warning. And I want you to lean in close for this one, because this is exactly the sort of thing that gets skipped. And it is exactly the sort of thing that matters most in a house like so many of ours, where the grandchildren come to visit and a good dog sleeps by the door. That rust-colored powder, iron sulfate, is the very same compound that sits in the little iron pills in your medicine cabinet. Ferrous sulfate. It is an iron supplement. And here is the sober truth an honest gardener owes you. Iron is one of the leading causes of accidental poisoning in young children. A curious toddler cannot tell the difference between a scoop of mineral and a scoop of candy. And it is hard on dogs, too. A dog's body simply cannot flush out the extra iron the way ours can. So I am going to ask you to do one simple thing. Treat that bag like medicine, not like plant food. Store it up high, sealed tight, out of reach. The same shelf where you keep anything you would never want a little one to find. And once you have sprayed, keep the grandkids and the dog off that wet grass until it has dried all the way through. None of this makes iron dangerous to use. It just makes you the kind of gardener who uses it with both eyes open. And that, to my mind, is what growing older in the garden is really about. Not doing less, just doing it a good deal wiser. Let's talk about how much to use. Because this is right where the internet gets a little reckless, and I would hate to see you follow it off a cliff. There is a recipe floating around out there, a certain scoop to a certain amount of water, and I will tell you plainly, that mix is strong. Stronger than what the professionals actually put down on their own turf. On a cool, cloudy morning, you might get away with it. But on a hot, bright July afternoon, that much iron does not just burn the weeds. It can scorch your own grass brown in a couple of days, and now you have traded a few dandelions for a lawn full of rusty, bald spots. That is a poor bargain. So I am not going to hand you a magic number today, and I want to tell you honestly why. The safe amount truly depends on your grass type, your weather that particular week, and the exact product sitting in your hands. A number that is just right for one lawn is flat wrong for the next one over. Here is the honest, grown-up path instead. There are real weed and moss products on the shelf, properly registered and tested, that use a gentler, chelated form of iron. Chelated just means the iron is wrapped up snug so it behaves itself. And every one of them carries a label that gives you the exact, tested rate that harms the weed without harming your lawn. The label is the law. And in this case, the label is also your best friend in the whole yard. Follow it, and you skip every bit of the guesswork. And do keep one honest thing in mind. Even the pretty green up you get from iron is a cosmetic thing that fades in a few weeks. Iron colors the blade. It does not build the plant. Pretty is not the same as healthy. Now, you may be wondering, the way that other video wanted you to wonder, why the store is full of $40 bottles when a plain bag of iron costs a few dollars. I will give you the honest answer, not the dramatic one. Iron is cheap. A plain mineral does not get a television commercial the way a fancy 4-step annual program does. Nobody is building a big business on a $5 bag you buy once a season. That is not some grand conspiracy whispered in a boardroom. It is just the plain shape of selling. The things that are cheap and simple do not get advertised, because there is no money in the advertising of them. But, and hear me on this one, do not let the word cheap fool you into hearing the word solved. Cheap and quick is a wonderful thing. It is not the same thing as gone for good. Anybody who tells you a $5 bag ends the war forever is just selling you that exciting half of the story all over again. Now, one quick thing, and then we get to my favorite part of the whole evening. Everything we are covering today. The honest version, the what it will do and the what it will not, the safe way to think about all of it. I have gathered onto a single one-page evergreen blueprint, something you can print out and keep by the back door, or tuck away in the garden shed with your good trowel. It has the method laid out plain, the real university sources so you can check every word I say, and a straight talk list of the weeds iron handles and the ones it does not. Scan the little code there on your screen, or grab the link right below this video. No email, no sign up, no catch. That is simply not how we do things here at EverGreen. All right, back to the good stuff. Here is where I will take my hat off to iron, because there is one job it does better than almost anything else on that shelf. Moss. Grass loves iron. Moss cannot abide it. Spray iron on a patch of moss and it will turn black within hours. It is honestly a little dramatic to watch. The greenkeepers have known this forever. It is how they keep those velvet putting greens dark and moss-free. So if you have got a shady corner of the yard that goes green and spongy every single spring, iron will flatten that moss fast. But now I am going to put my evergreen hat back on, because this next part is what sets us apart from every other lawn channel out there. Moss is a messenger. Moss did not move into your yard because your lawn was unlucky or because you did something wrong. Moss moved in because your yard, in that one spot, is trying to tell you something. Moss shows up where four things are all true at once. Too much shade, too much moisture that lingers and will not drain, soil that is packed down hard as a sidewalk, and grass that has gone thin and hungry. Moss is not the disease. Moss is the symptom. It is your yard raising its hand and saying, "Help, nothing else will grow for me here." So you can spray the iron and blacken the moss, and believe me, I understand the deep satisfaction of watching it go. But if you walk away and ignore what the moss was trying to tell you, it will be right back by fall. And the university folks will tell you the very same thing, that iron on moss is only ever a temporary fix, because the moss simply regrows the moment conditions suit it again. So here is the real evergreen move. Read the messenger before you kill it. Is a low branch throwing shade on that spot all day long? Trim it back, let a little light down in. Is there a low corner that stays soggy for days after every rain? That soggy ground is your true problem. See to the drainage. Is the soil packed so hard you could not push a fork into it? Loosen it. Get some air and some life back down into it. Do those things, and the grass comes back on its own, and the moss finds it has nowhere left to sit. Think of a narrow strip of moss along the north side of a house. The shady, damp side. The kind that comes creeping back every spring no matter what you throw at it. That is not a moss problem at all. That is a shade and drainage problem wearing a moss costume. Thin out the shrubs so light gets in. Fix where the downspout dumps its rainwater and the moss quits on its own, and never needs another drop of iron. The iron buys you the season. Reading the messenger buys you the years. All right, let me save you some heartache. Before you mix a single drop, be honest with yourself about what is actually growing out there, because iron is downright picky about who it will fight. Iron handles the broadleaf crowd beautifully. Your dandelions, your clover, plantain, chickweed, that creeping Charlie with the little scalloped leaves, and ground ivy. Wide leaves, big, easy targets. Those it will take right down. But iron will not touch the grassy weeds. And this one trips folks up every year, so let me be clear. Crabgrass. That flat, sprawling summer bully that fans out like a spider. Iron will not lay a finger on it. Same with quackgrass and goosegrass and that coarse stuff along the edges. And nutsedge, the one with the stiff little three-sided stem that you can feel is a triangle if you roll it between your fingers. Iron leaves it be. Why is that? Because those weeds are cousins to your lawn grass. They are narrow-bladed, they are built the very same way, and the iron simply cannot tell them apart from the good grass you are trying to keep. So if you spray iron hoping to knock out your crabgrass, all you will manage to do is give that crabgrass a nice iron tonic and a deeper shade of green. I would far rather tell you that now, plainly, than have you spray in good faith and then stand there scratching your head, wondering why the worst weed in the whole yard sailed right through without a scratch. For the grassy weeds, iron is the wrong tool, and no amount of it will ever change that. Now here is the thought I most want to leave sitting with you tonight, long after this video has gone dark. Every one of those broadleaf weeds, every dandelion, every creeping patch of clover, got into your lawn through the exact same door, and that door is bare ground and open sunlight. A dandelion seed is a lazy little thing, in the best possible way. It cannot sprout down in the dark. It needs light landing on bare soil, and a bit of warmth on that soil, before it will wake up and take hold. Crabgrass is the very same story. It is a summer weed that waits for the sun to heat up the bare dirt like a signal flare before it will even bother to sprout. Shade that dirt under a thick canopy of grass, and you have quietly switched the signal off, which means a lawn grown thick and tall enough that the sunlight never quite reaches the dirt. That is a lawn where most weed seeds simply never wake up at all. They land, they wait, and they die waiting. And the university trials back this up completely. Thin lawns mowed down too short fill up with dandelion and clover and crabgrass, while dense, taller lawns shrug those same weeds right off. The real weed control was never in a bag at all. It was in the thickness of the grass the whole time. Now, how you build a lawn like that? The mowing it a good deal taller, the feeding of the soil beneath it, the overseeding of the thin bare spots. Well, that is a whole fireside conversation all its own, and we have walked through every step of it together in other EverGreen videos, so I will not run the whole road again tonight. All I want, right now, is for you to see that weed a little differently. It is not an enemy that showed up to spite you. It is a door that got left standing open, a patch of bare, sunny soil that quietly sent out an invitation. Close the door, thicken up that grass, and you will reach for the iron a great deal less. That, my friend, is the difference between fighting weeds forever and slowly, quietly, winning. You know, my grandmother never owned a single bottle of weed killer in all her life. Not one. What she had was a paring knife with a worn wooden handle, a shallow basket, and about 15 minutes after supper, when the light went gold and the heat finally came off the day, she would walk the yard slow, bend down. With a groan, the very same groan I make now. Pop a few dandelions out by the root, drop them in the basket, and by the time the fireflies came up over the fence line, she was done. And her yard was the envy of the whole street. She used to tell me the yard will always tell you what it needs, if only you will slow down enough to listen to it. And you know something? After all these years, and all these gardens, I have found she was right about very nearly everything. That iron in the bag is a real tool. An old one, a good one, honest work in the right hands. But it is a tool for the leaf, for the top, for the surface, for right now. And the real work, The work that actually lasts, it always happens down in the dark. Down in the soil, where the roots and the little living things trade what they have got. Quiet and unseen. Season after patient season. Feed that. Feed the ground, and not just the blade. And the weeds grow quieter every single year, until one fine day you look out the window and realize you have hardly got any left. That, my friend, is the whole evergreen idea in a single breath. Feed the soil, not the plant. The rest tends to take care of itself. All right. Before you head back out to the garden, do an old gardener one small favor. If there was something useful in here for you today, go ahead and subscribe to EverGreen Seniors. We put out one of these every week, always the honest version, with no sponsor leaning over our shoulder, telling us what to say. And go grab that free one-page blueprint from the code on your screen, or the link waiting below. But mostly, I have got a real question for you, and I read every single answer that comes in. Down in the comments, tell me two things. First, what weed is driving you up the wall this year? The one you would pay good money to be rid of. And second, here is the good part. How did your mother, or your father, or your grandmother handle that very same weed back before the store shelf was crowded with sprays? Tell me the old way, the knife and basket way. Because I learn something new from you fine folks every week, and honestly, that back and forth is my favorite part of doing any of this at all. Take good care of yourself, take good care of that soil, and I will see you next time, out by the fence.